So far we saw quite impressive effects of the low ball technique. In some studies the effects were twice as strong as in the control condition. But how strong is the low ball technique in comparison to other techniques? For example, in comparison to other also well-known persuasion techniques. For example, in comparison to the foot in the door technique. I suppose you already know the foot in the door technique, and you probably have heard about a classical study in which participants were visited at home and asked if they were willing to place a small sign for safe driving. So it was all about reminding drivers to drive carefully, and it was a really small sign of 3 inches square. And written on the sign was, "Be a safe driver." Many participants said, yeah, okay, why not? Let's do it. Yeah? It's not a big thing. But 2 weeks later, after this first contact, they were visited by another experimenter who asked them, well, we are here for safe driving and we want to improve the driving situation. We want more safe driving. Would you put this sign? And then the participants were shown a picture of a very large sign reading "Drive carefully," placed in front of a house. But what you could see on the picture was that this sign would be that big that a big part of the house would no longer be visible. So what do you think? Would they agree on that? Well, surprisingly, about 55% of the participants said, yeah, okay, you can install it. Whereas in the control condition, in which there was only one contact, less than 20% said, okay, you can do that. So what happened here? Why did the agreement on the first really small request increase the compliance rate in such a massive way? Well, the authors say that the compliance with the small request changed the self-perception of the participants. So by agreeing to install the small sign, they justified their decision by telling themselves, well, when I put on this small sign, it's probably important for me to improve the driving situation, to make driving more safe. And therefore, when the second request was made, it was more easy to convince them that it's really important to install this really big sign. So as you can see, the mechanism behind the foot in the door technique is, in psychology, we would speak of cognitive dissonance, and the reduction of cognitive dissonance is quite similar to the mechanisms behind the low ball technique. Nevertheless, there are some differences, and therefore let's take a look what happens if these two strategies are compared, which strategy is more effective, and what happens if both strategies are combined. That's very interesting as well. Is a combination of both techniques even more effective? Well, the following study tried to answer these questions. It was the study by Hornig and colleagues published in 1990 in the Journal of Public Health Reports. Comparison of 3 inducement techniques to improve compliance in a health survey conducted by telephone. They had a good number of 335 participants that they called via telephone, and their goal was to make the participants participate in a 20-minute telephone interview concerning health issues. So you know the situation, you're sitting at home and somebody calls you and he says, well, we are conducting a survey, would you participate? As there are many of these calls nowadays, we often tend to say, no, I don't have the time to do this. Therefore, many companies are looking for strategies, for ways to improve the compliance rate. And one way could be the foot in the door tactic. And this was used on one group of participants. These participants were first asked a small request. They were asked if they would answer 3 short questions concerning health issues. Later, in a second contact, just like in the study by Friedman and Fraser, they were called again and asked if they were now willing to participate in a longer survey, which would last 20 minutes. So this was the foot in the door technique. In the lowballing condition, the participants were first asked whether they were willing to participate in a telephone interview concerning health issues at a later date. And this interview, they were told, would last approximately only 10 minutes. But at the time of the second contact, when they were called for the second time, they were told that unfortunately the university had added some more questions and now the survey would take 20 minutes. So this is lowballing. We have first a quite good offer. They say, it's only about 10 minutes. But later on they tell us, well, now it's 20 minutes. The third condition was a combination of both techniques. It was a combination of the foot in the door technique, lowballing technique. Just like in the lowball technique, first the participants were asked, well, would you be willing to participate in a telephone interview concerning health issues at a later date? This will last approximately only 10 minutes. But exactly in this moment, they also used the foot in the door technique because they said, well, and while we are on the phone, could you please respond to 3 questions concerning health matters? So both strategies were used in this first contact. In the second contact, when they were called for the second time, they again were told, unfortunately, the university had added some more questions and the survey would last 20 minutes. In comparison to the control condition, in which all subjects were immediately told that the survey would take 20 minutes, the foot in the door technique worked a little bit better. About 60% of the participants in the foot in the door condition said, I will participate in your 20-minute lasting survey. Whereas in the control condition, the success rate was about 10% less. In the control condition, only 48% agreed to participate. The lowball technique was much more effective. It was more effective than the control condition and it was more effective than the foot in the door technique. And this is something that turned out in some other studies as well. So by trend, at the moment, it really looks like that the lowball technique is more effective than the foot in the door technique. Even more effective in this study seemed to be the combination of both strategies, because in this condition the success rate was 84%, which is quite impressive. I mean, if somebody calls you and tells you, well, we are conducting a survey, would you think that 84% of the participants would agree to this request? I probably would not assume that. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and maybe next time when somebody tries to trap you with a lowball offer, you remind yourself of this episode and you say, forget it. Not with me. I won't fall for that.